Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and this is Mars, our Jupiter day. The ascendant is ruled by the Saturn, um, by the Saturn, and the midheaven is ruled by Mars, 2020 in Libra. So, Moon is in Taurus, 10 degrees. Now, I have to admit, I'm going to my Neptune square, which means I'm pretty fucking isolated anyway, but the things that I tend to, I normally don't find other astrologers openly tend to in that matter, either because I'm isolated from like other people or whatever. But this is something that I have seen, and I talked about the yod shape, but this is something that I have seen, and I didn't hear anybody talking about that. So this is Johnny Patry, and again, it doesn't mean that nobody talks about that. It's just like that's how I experience the world right now, and I saw that the eclipses are on the charts of, I call them Mark and Hilden. Geert Wilders, who is a person who is running for being head of Netherlands. He's a populist right-wing leader that wants to dissolve from, yes, Davos, or definitely like the reason I call him Gilden is kind of like, will Geertje bring Gilden? Will he bring a local currency that is antithetical to the globalists? Now, I know people talk about controlled oppositions and so on. Absolutely, I'm not. It's like I don't challenge that. But the thing is that the other currency name is Mark Rutte. And so it pinpoints Mark Rutte's chart, and it pinpoints Geert Wilders' chart. And here, this lady is talking about an event that kind of looks like the 7th of October, which was kind of like, the false flag in Israel, and then the false flag in Palestine, being quite a major event. And she's seeing something the equivalent of Pearl Harbor. And so, yeah. And I saw that Article 4. Now, what is Article 4? Article 4 is about invoking NATO for a military operation, whereas Article 5 is full-blown World War. That's basically what it means. Okay, so Article 4 was invoked yesterday in Poland. Russia sent a couple of drones and bombed them above Poland. I just think about the fact that the Houthis would send missiles to Israel that would usually be bombed above Jordan. And it's like, Jordan is not in NATO. That's the difference. And so Jordan could invoke everything about anything. On the other side, if Jordan was in a sort of a military alliance that is open and visible, it could invoke the equivalent of an Article 4 on the Houthis, if Yemen would not be in that alliance. And so, so this lady is seeing something like a Pearl Harbor. I was seeing basically how the charts of Geert Wilders and the Mark Rutte being so personally, natally pinpointed by these eclipses, and it reminded me of the eclipses in 2023, which was, I think, around the time when I began to check up like the charts, first of Wilders and then of Mark Rutte. And I say I have to record. And so the yod shapes are indeed tremendously disruptive. I talked about Frank Olson that had this chart as kind of like the psychological Dr. Mengele of the CIA. And the fact that these charts, are considered to be carrying timestamps of main events. I think it was also in the 9/11 in October 2023. As for those who ask about the Ukraine war, I haven't checked the entire astrology. I was um, it was Jupiter, Pluto. Jupiter was with Pluto on I think 22nd degree in Capricorn in 2022. So it was February 2022. I don't remember exactly the date. February 22, 2022, but it was not the beginning of the war. It was a couple of days before that, and it was right around when I came back to Israel, basically. So yeah, which was good for me to leave Netherlands before the Ukraine war because of the refugees. Like Dutchies would not get a house. So, but then I left Israel. And the omens that Israel is going to be a focal point of a world war have been there, but this is like more affecting the people. I don't know where the Pearl Harbor is going to take place. The presence of Uranus gives us, and it's going to be an inconjunct between Mars and Uranus, okay? And which means that Uranus is now in conjuncting the Mars of Geert Wilders and Mark Rutte, both very prominent figures. Um, okay, one in the right-wing, populist, nationalistic, dissolving even the European Union. Okay, so kind of next it, and that has an effect on the currency. And the other, classic Davos, skulls and bones, Bilderberg and Bells and whatnot. Sneakers billionaires, Nike, Enki, and so on. So that is a very interesting two figures, um, and they were working together, and then they've been in opposition to one another. And same Nakshatra, I think it's the same Nakshatra, and so this is going to be quite interesting. I suspect, therefore, that the events would have to do with Netherlands, but I think it's coming from the Arctic. Now we already seen, the things that have been on the low in NATO, and nobody's been upping and upping. We had a kind of like a Cuba missile crisis on the low. We had the cutting of the webs, which I have to admit, I can tell this joke openly now, right? I called it cord cutting with the 1100. If you know, you know. Dutchies would understand what I'm talking about. And anyway, and I don't feel like I have to fix anything. So, and that was, and Russia keep attacking. It tried to bomb the Mark and Zelensky several times. Once in Kiev, where we had the 19 something. I remember something with 19. And then before that in Odessa. Watch my Jupiter point of Thales. What was it? Rockefeller Astrolabes on BeachUt. And that was the nobody in Odessa type of thing. And yeah, something about the Arctics. But what she says is going to be something the equivalent of 9/11, October 7th, and Pearl Harbor. And because of Uranus in sidereal Taurus, which is tropical Gemini, but it's sidereal Taurus, it's going to be something the equivalent of Pearl Harbor. They have been pushing a lot for a world war. Now, the astrology is an astrology of a mixture of World War, Cold War, the French Revolution, and the American Independence War. So, and the Soviet Union fall. So I understand why there is a desire to do like a great reset, and Pluto is out of bounds between 2025 to 2035. It's kind of hectic in the sky right now, as my teacher and colleague now, Krasia Tasio, said. Quoting the ancient joking, it says, "We're living in interesting times, and the blessings. I do not wish you to live in interesting times. We are living in interesting times, and this eclipse is going to pinpoint some of these interesting times. It's the entire September. Um, she talks about three yods. This is where it's nice to have colleagues because we can't do everything all by ourselves. And and then I noticed the yod coming up, and I had a colleague that kind of tried to telepathically tell me the minor aspects, meaning the inconjuncts. And so, and so shout out to Elston Kappa. Um, and so, yeah, all kinds of things. I know that people are targeted individuals, so people watch a podcast and they can be targeted and so on. That's just interesting times. So yeah, it's probably going to be a big event. Probably being situated in Israel/Palestine is not the best astrocartography location for that. But I have to admit that sometimes life is lifing, and you know, a lot of people came to me like to ask about that, and I don't know. I don't have, and I also have my experience that, let's say when I was in Netherlands, it was an overlay of a chart on my natal chart. So the natal chart doesn't stop being problematic. It's just now is another added pressure point, and that can have juxtapositions of remediation and added problems to any astrocartography added layer. Other than that, go consult with people that for them is the expertise. Um, and yes, because there is also the chart of the country and how it correlates with the chart of the person. There's so many charts to look at, um, and yet with people that are drawn to certain something. So the intuition here is also a part of the decision making. I know that intuition is exactly what those projects are working on, confusing, and this is also a part of the reality we're living in. Um, predictions, predictions, predictions. Definitely the the good. Let's talk about the good news. Jupiter will go retrograde on Procyon, which is Jupiter return for Mark Rutte, who is current head of NATO. And this would mark a year of discussions and thinking and deeply understanding what is required to actually have peace. And peace is not a couple of orders meeting going Nazi under, in clandestine, clandestine, however you say that. Peace is actual peace. And Procyon accentuates on that, where the entire world will have one whole year of Jupiter going back and forth from Procyon, rethinking what is peace and how do we avoid the nuclear holocaust. Now, the midheaven of Israel is on that point. So, you know, to jab Mark is kind of like, hey, Article 5, 12 o'clock for you. And will Israel activate Article 5 on itself? I don't know. Will Palestine? I hope not. Like they've been through it. Haven't the Palestinians suffered enough? And but I don't think that they're going to. It's kind of like with this Mars. I think it's not the point. But yet it's a Mars that is close to the chart of Israel. Now, France has been diminishing the Mossad agents in its region, um, and, and that is probably because they're planning something for Israel. I know that they are acknowledging the Palestinian country, which they may feel kind of targets them. I don't know. I mean, there's so many false flags that people can't see the forest. um, and yeah, it's probably going to be a full-fledged NATO activation, which is going to be premature. There's not enough weapon, there's not enough anything, and those who will attack will probably still not have enough because it's so There's nothing that says outright Procyon, but you can't have a world war without Procyon in the mix because of the threat of nuclear holocaust and the fact that Mark has Jupiter on Procyon. Maloney, I think, and or Kaja Kallas have a moon there, so Italy and the EU is going to be highly involved um, by proxy. The direct hits of the eclipse are Geert Wilders and Mark Rutte, which means NATO, Netherlands, anything right-wing, nationalistic, so on, because they're going to probably try to do something like those who will do that will have this fate. Probably they're going to try to Nazify Geert Wilders, um, but also the Medicis came to mind, and the Medicis are behind, a lot of the Vatican. I don't know if this current papacy, Maloney, is associated with the Medicis. You could call it lobbying. so, so those countries probably come to mind, but again by proxy. Um, the eclipses themselves have a certain trajectory. I think it's about the Arctic this time. The Arctic is going to be very involved, but because of the unusual thing, the inconjunct between Mars and Uranus here, which also inconjuncts Saturn Neptune. So both Wilders and Mark have a Yod now in transit with the Saturn Neptune and with Uranus and Sedna, which is also where my Pluto resides. And so this is where they are going to experience disruptions, and whatever their course of action by this challenging Pluto in Aquarius will bring, their action will be disrupted as well. And it has to do with basically Mossad, CIA, but particularly not the organizations themselves, but more like, it's kind of like you think about Palantir as an AI psychosis, which is basically people being targeted by AI. They're targeted individuals by AI. And you think about Palantir as kind of like the founders birthing this baby, but now this baby goes Frankenstein. And whatever course of action will be taken, we'll still have to face the fact that this thing goes Frankenstein on them. And that's disruptive. Okay, it's not a linear predictive pattern. And so those that work with chaos and order out of chaos, we have to remember that the 60s generation, the Pluto Virgos that also had Pluto Uranus, there was a lot of refining of, unfortunately, MK Ultra which basically is targeted individuals, or the techno-psychological psychic Dr. Mengele methods, okay, just to put it outright and simple. And now those things are having their disruptions, but with the Pluto Virgos, people could control chaos. This is not exactly the spirit of the times, because while Pluto trines Uranus, Mars is going to be inconjuncting Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and squaring Pluto. So while tapping into that controlled chaos by the position of that zodiac, which is again on my Pluto. So I'm not really happy with it either. But tapping into that is going to be very tremulous, very unpredictable, very chaotic, and not the type of order out of chaos that the Masonic rites have been trying to opt for. And this is important. It means that everybody is going to be equally surprised, even when they predicted things, and that is the opportunities and the challenges, however predictable, are predictable in their unpredictability, which means that there is an authentic and genuine reset going on, and it's not necessarily going to act the way anybody predicted. It's probably going to be a little bit of everything in a very weird arrangement in about a decade. So if you talk about, I talked about strange attractors and so on and so forth. This is also the time for those who've been triggered that may find it positive, negative, I don't know. But this is also where the strange attractors themselves are transforming, and whatever that means. Okay, that's just. I opened with an ascendant on a galactic center. I think for this one. No, the previous episode was ascendant on a galactic center. This one is 17 degrees Capricorn, which is the prepper decan of Capricorn. Saturn is retrograde. Yes, it's and it's not exactly a chaos that people will be able to embrace, and that is also important to remember. Ooh, ooh. Okay, I had a little bit of a channeling. Okay, there was a presence next to me, and I felt like I'm struggling, like I wanted to embrace that, and I had a struggle to embrace that because I had a struggle within myself, and I was, I have Uranus in conjunct both Sun and Moon, and which is Yod. So my astrology is disturbing and disrupting, um, and so I had it's feeling like I'm trying to embrace something, and now I think it was like trying to embrace chaos and the chaos within, while doing that and barely being able to hold on. So, and in that way, it was relatable. Um, so that is the thing. It's a chaos that is difficult to embrace. Even if we struggle hard to embrace the chaos, people kind of find themselves having to let go. It's powerful, and it can also be painful, or can be dissociated from the fact that they had to let go. Um, that's how I experience that. Of course, it can be very isolating, but with the inconjunct to Neptune on this eclipse by Mars, um, there's going to be something that disrupts isolation as well, but also something that disrupts something from going fully worldwide. So, but the disruption will be worldwide. Um, yes, it's in between the end of Libra and the beginning of Scorpio. That's what I have to say.